Hello and happy Thursday to all of you. It is March the 10th, March of International Women's Week. And I'm so thrilled to have you here with me today. My name is Caroline Milton. I am the owner of Milton Coaching Collective. We provide stress management and burnout prevention services to individuals and to organizations. We cannot tackle the burnout problem from only one direction. We need to be tackling both the organizational standpoint and the individual standpoint. So I come live to you every Thursday to talk about different strategies around individual action and organizational action that we can take in order to increase our energy, increase our productivity, and prevent burnout. I am here this week to talk about my own story of burnout. Now, if you've been following along with my sister series, Take a Break with Caroline and Lennis, which I release every Friday with Lennis Perez, then you may have already heard my story about burnout. But for those of you who haven't, I wanted to share it today because it is an important message. So I come from a background in industrial engineering. My degree is actually in biomedical engineering, but I went into food and beverage manufacturing out of college, and I spent close to a decade in the manufacturing environment. Now, I had a lot of wonderful opportunities within the organizations I worked for throughout this time to advance in leadership, ultimately ending up in plant leadership for an organization here in the Kansas City metro area. Again, lots of incredible experiences throughout my career, but a large part of what garnered my success in such a short period of time was my relentless pursuit of problem solving. And I took a lot of pride on seeing every problem through to solution. I would sometimes be like a bloodhound out on the manufacturing floor, trying to track down the sensor that was causing the issues on the manufacturing line, or the input card that was causing the issue within our programming. So I was relentless, and it paid off. I was seeing promotions and on track for a career trajectory of success within this field. But in the summer of 2017, late in the summer of 2017, we were troubleshooting some CO2 pumps. In our process, we used CO2 pumps as part of the process. And these were specialty pumps. They were German pumps, and they required very specific care for them. This was a days-long incident, and during this time, our operations were completely shut down because of how dependent the operation was on CO2. So there was a lot of pressure for me, the maintenance manager, my team of mechanics, and operations in general to solve this issue. We had a very diverse team that was tackling the problem, but it was incredibly stressful. And by day 6 of us troubleshooting, something very specific happened. I have lived in California before in my career. Early on, I lived in California and have been in the midst of earthquakes a number of times, once while I was at work. And it felt like I was experiencing an earthquake. But I was not in California, I was in Kansas, and Kansas is not well known for its earthquakes. And in fact, when I looked around to my peers and asked, did you feel that? And that no one felt what I was feeling. But very much it felt like the world around me was shaking, actually that it was wobbling, and I had no idea what was going on. So we called my husband, he came and he picked me up, took me to the nearest urgent care where I met with a doctor, and she asked me a series of questions. At the end of her time evaluating me, she told me, Caroline, you need to consider a different career, because what's happening here is you're not sleeping and you're not managing your stress. And if you don't do something different, you're going to end up in an early grave. And those were startling words for me to hear. In fact, they really deflated me. I felt like a failure. I felt like, how on earth am I not cut out for this? I work so hard, and yet my body is failing me. Now, at the time, I was not aware of the term burnout. I mean, the term existed. It has existed for millennia. It's referenced in Christian biblical text, even. But I was not familiar with burnout. And even I think if I had been familiar with the term burnout, I would have been way too stubborn to admit that was what was happening to me. I viewed burnout as failure. I viewed it as weakness. And I was not those things. I was not a failure and I was not weak. And in fact, I thought of burnout as being a result of poor health. And I worked out 7 days a week. I ate boring, bland food that was considered healthy. And so there was no way that I was unhealthy because I checked those two boxes. But what I've learned in the time since is that burnout is so diverse in the experiences that people can have. You can have a physical burnout, you can have an emotional burnout, you can experience a mental burnout, you can experience a combination of those. And the symptoms can and will present differently. Not only that, I learned that there is so much more than diet and exercise that goes into managing your health and well-being. You have to be cognizant of the amount of stress that you're experiencing. You have to prioritize your sleep. You have to make sure that you're drinking plenty of water. The list goes on and on, the things that we can be doing to ensure that we're setting ourselves up for longevity and vitality instead of just health right here and right now. So I want to share with you here some of the different symptoms that you might experience when you're in the midst of burnout. Because again, burnout can present differently. And a lot of times I have people reaching out to me with the question of, is this burnout? I don't know if what I'm experiencing is just stress and overwhelm or if it is actually burnout. So there are symptoms that you can experience. You might experience symptoms across these three spectrums, or you might be just experiencing physical symptoms, or you might just be experiencing emotional symptoms. But let's talk through them briefly. Physical symptoms of burnout can look like low energy, feeling tired and easily fatigued much of the time. So this isn't just a, one day here, one day there, but truly feeling low energy chronically across time. Through our hormone shifts, and especially for menstruating people, you are going to experience hormonal shifts throughout the month. And those are going to contribute to your energy levels. So again, we're talking about chronic low energy, day in and day out. No matter what, you are feeling low on energy. You might be experiencing frequent illness or frequent headaches or other types of pains. Those are indications of an inflamed immune system. And so that can be a signal of stress. You might be experiencing a change in appetite or sleep habits. This was very true for me. I was experiencing a change in sleep habits that I was not even aware of. During this time of burnout, I didn't dream. And I thought that meant I was sleeping too soundly. But in fact, because I was in such a chronic state of stress and because I was anticipating stress at literally every hour of the night, I was not getting into deep, late stages of my sleep cycle that are responsible for memory consolidation, critical thinking, all of those really important brain processes that we need day in and day out. Behaviorally, you might be experiencing substance abuse or dependency. I've talked about this before. When I experienced burnout in college, I did not have the energy and I turned towards medication that was not prescribed to me in order to experience more energy. And that is a clear indicator that I was beyond my capacity and was in the midst of burnout. But it was college, it was engineering school. We wore our all-nighters as a badge of honor. We wore our stress as a badge of honor. And so I was definitely not willing to admit then as well that I was experiencing burnout. If you have a low tolerance to stress because of burnout, you are going to be more irritable around others. You're going to have low patience and low tolerance for people making mistakes, people speaking up around you. So if you find yourself a little snappier than normal, then this could be a reason. Isolating oneself from others, so shrinking back, not being willing to speak up in meetings or in collaboration, or even withdrawing from relationships that are important to you, whether that's friends, family, romantic partners. Those can be a symptom of burnout. Also withdrawing from responsibilities, whether that is in our community life, if that is in our professional life or in our personal life, or even the responsibilities we owe ourselves, right? So withdrawing from taking care of ourselves, brushing our teeth on a regular basis, things like that. Putting off getting things done, right? We can't stay on top of our normal rhythms of life. I would also add, this is kind of a physical and kind of a behavioral symptom, but noticing a change in your speaking patterns is sometimes a sign of burnout. And this was true for me and kind of harkens back to my lack of sleep and just chronic stress that I was experiencing that was turning off certain parts of my brain. I remember very distinctly being so frustrated that I could not get out coherent thoughts without sidetracking in conversations. And I remember sitting in the car with my husband on a road trip and just getting so frustrated at my tongue because I could not speak eloquently and convey my thoughts and emotions during that time. And that was in large part because I was in the midst of burnout and didn't know it. So let's shift finally into emotional symptoms of burnout. This is where we experience chronic feelings of self doubt, imposter syndrome, a sense of failure. We experience a loss of motivation or decreased satisfaction from our work, which what once lit us on fire now feels like it's been totally extinguished. And that can also apply outside of our work too, right? If you used to love singing and theater and drama, but no longer find any pleasure or joy from those activities, that can be due to burnout in your life. Feeling defeated, feeling isolated in the world, that you're the only one that can possibly be feeling this way. But in truth, there's so many people around you, so many people in other industries that are also experiencing what you experience, and feeling cynical and bitter about life. Now, this, we're experiencing some hard times right now, some really like history making times of our life, of our country, of our society, of our world. And so it's understandable that we might feel bitter, we might feel cynical, but this is kind of extending beyond that, where we just do not see hope, we don't see joy. So these are some of the most common symptoms that you might experience of burnout, but again, is not all encompassing. You might experience other symptoms as well. But if anything on these lists speaks out to you that says, oh, yeah, I am experiencing that, I do relate to this feeling, this sensation, then DM me. Let's talk about that symptom, what it might mean. What are some things that you can do to start to shift your experience of stress and burnout? Because again, as I mentioned, it does take individual action, it does take organizational action. And the best thing you can do is understand what you are able to do to influence and change your experience of burnout. So again, DM me if you want to talk more about that. Tomorrow we'll be releasing our next episode of Take a Break with Caroline and Lennis. And we're going to be talking more about health indicators. So that'll be a really valuable episode. Those are posted on YouTube and on SoundCloud, but you can also subscribe to my newsletter. And that newsletter will give you all the links directly to your email inbox. So make sure you do that. Otherwise, we'll see you next week for our next episode of Engineering Your Energy. I'm Caroline Milton, and thanks for being here today.